My colleague Chris Roberts is in Indonesia. Chris.
Yes, Jeremy, this is possibly one of the major front lines in one of the biggest humanitarian aid operations the world has ever seen. And joining me here is Ian Small from Oxfam to tell me a little bit more about your operation. How's it going?
Well, all things considered, I think we've had a phenomenal couple of days here in Banda Aceh and the surrounding environs. Today we've managed to get some water out to some of the internally displaced people who have conjugated around mosques and schools because they've lost absolutely everything. So we've got water out to about 3,000 people, which is an absolute priority. And we've started digging some sanitation facilities. But it really is just a drop in the bucket. I think even more importantly, through a meeting we had yesterday with the coordinating minister, with some other agencies, there's starting to become some clarity about what's going to become of the displaced persons. We're moving towards a camp structure, consolidating what is now hundreds of people that have collected spontaneously all over the place into a camp situation where we can begin to provide much more efficient humanitarian assistance to them. So that's a very important development here today.
Do you know where this is going to be?
Well, we're still trying to work through the details. The principle that we settled on, and it's a very important principle, is that they need to be as close as possible to their home of origin. Obviously, we don't want to set them down amongst the devastation, but we don't want a family who has originated from the coast to be spent 200 kilometers inland. So that's the principle we're going to operate on. We also want to operate on the principle that there is that informed consent, that the men, women, and children, the families are able to make that choice for themselves of where do they want to be in the camp and how they're going to manage their empowering themselves.
We're talking about getting water to some of the more remote places. Do you fear that there are still places that you and the other agencies haven't got to?
There are countless places that we haven't even begun to identify. There are, and I think that's again the important thing about the direction towards camps. That will at least begin to allow the population an outlet to work towards and to seek humanitarian assistance. Right now they're scattered all over the place, in the town of Banda Aceh, in the district, all the way down the coast. There will be people that are still marooned on what are now islands because of the disruption to the coastline on the west. So no, I don't think anybody has any kind of idea of the extent of the number of people that have survived this disaster.
We've seen Oxfam, of course, over many years working in places of appalling devastation. How great a challenge is this?
You know, being here on the ground, really just trying to get that 3,000 liters out to the people. You know, I can imagine there's this huge thing behind us. I do know that the organization is not only active here in Aceh, but we're also active very much in Sri Lanka, southern India. It's, I would imagine, probably the biggest operation that we've mounted as well.
What have you thought about action from governments and people around the world?
The outpouring is obviously significant. We need to ensure that this is not just going to be a relief effort, that after the passion dies down, that people are still here to be able to take it into the rehabilitation and the longer term development phase. That's clearly one of Oxfam's area of how we look at the world, the need to go through that continuum. The rehabilitation here is going to be a Herculean task.
I mean, the trauma, psychological injuries must be enormous.
Yeah, indeed. There are a couple of agencies that are dealing with that. A lot of that will also be important when we start talking about camps and people needing informed consent. You know, are they even in a position, given the trauma, not knowing where their family is, not knowing what is left of their village that they have now fled, are they in a position to be able to decide for what's going to happen in the future? So they're going to need that support to be able to make those decisions.
Are the aid priorities changing at all after 9 days, or are we still desperate for water, biscuits, basic stuff?
No, the priorities are still there, both in terms of even the search and rescue is still going on. I understand that's not an area of activity for Oxfam, but that's still a reality. What is of utmost importance and where we keep trying to put effort in is the coordination. The coordination is improving now within the international community. The government and the international community has also now come together, so that's a very important direction forward.
Ian Small from Oxfam, thanks for your time and the best of luck. Doing a great job.
Pleasure.